Well, hello everybody. My name is Chad Peterson, and I am happy to be presenting today on an operations management issue I'm dealing with at my place of work. A little bit of context will be helpful though, as I go into this. I work in a relatively small nonprofit, at least small compared to some of the organizations that I know you work for. And being that we are a nonprofit, our product, if you will, is service and program based, not a tangible good. Also, you really should know about 95% of our funding comes from private donations, which means that our method for generating revenue is directly tied to our investment in the community and to people's passions, which is a very different business model than a for-profit organization. Our services and programs fit into 5 major areas of operation. We call them life circumstances, education, community service and organizing, spiritual care, and facility rental. I want to keep this presentation high level, so without going into detail, just know that within each of these 5 areas, well, you can call them departments if you want, there are a number of programs and services that are diverse, ranging from community service work with low income, food and housing insecure populations, to childcare, counseling, end-of-life care, and even facility rentals to groups like Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous and Rasmussen Nursing College, and many more. That being said, organizations are organizations and must be managed well in order to be effective. So here's the issue that I'm dealing with. Before COVID-19 took over the world, most of the services and programs we offer were conducted in person and on campus. We had a staffing structure in place that was well equipped to create and provide all of our programming and services. Capacity was able to meet demand. Now, after COVID-19, around 80% of our programs and services had to be transitioned to an online format. I should mention that our strategic plan had us moving in that direction, and we had in the past 3 years invested in technological infrastructure upgrades for online conferencing and video production, so that was great. We pivoted quickly, and our team responsible for creating and implementing the programs and services were able to recreate what they were doing for an online context. However, there was one significant difference. Our IT and digital communication staff became necessary for production and were then inundated with requests that they had never received before. So let me give you an oversimplified example using an end-of-life scenario. Meet Matt. He is a husband, a father, and an uncle who loves fishing and his family. He is a crazy, goofy character and everyone loves him. Unfortunately, 6 months ago, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. After a short fight, Matt died from his disease 2 days ago. His family wants to honor him and find support in their time of grief and emotional stress. So they reach out to us. In the past, one of our staff who work with end of life care would organize and provide counseling and services to the family, which often would include a celebration of life service. All this would take place in person and in a specific geographical location like our facility, a funeral home, or the family's home. Now, after COVID, the same scenario would unfold, but many of the same services that were offered to had to migrate to digital platforms. Now, a celebration of life service that once was in a specific geographical location was now online and incorporated participants from all over. Now, our end of life staff had to work with IT and digital communication staff who would often have to produce and edit video, create graphic designs, and prep equipment for facilitating a well done online end of life service. Now, what if multiple staff members conducting programs and services in the diverse area of operations I mentioned earlier all need some level of IT and communication support? You see the issue, right? There is a constraint, a bottleneck building in the system because the demand on our IT and communication staff is now equal, if not at times greater, than their capacity. Well, what do we do? Well, in the theory of constraints that we've already discussed in class, there are 5 steps. 1. Identify the system's constraints. We just did that. It's the increased demand on our IT and communication staff to bring our organization's programming and services online. Step 2 is to decide how to exploit the system's constraints. Well, there were several potential solutions available to us. We could increase staff to handle the added demand, or we could look internally and see if there are staff with the necessary skill sets and extra capacity to help distribute the load. The second option was chosen as a short-term solution. Step 3 is to subordinate everything to the decisions of step 2. Done. Step 4 is to elevate the system's constraints, and step 5 states that if a constraint is broken in step 4, go back to step 1. Well, currently we're in step 5, and yes, this situation is playing out very similarly to our reading in the goal. We pulled a key staff person who works in developing and implementing community service to help with IT and communication, and yes, that will soon begin to create a constraint in that area of our organization. So what is in place now is getting us by for the moment, but it's absolutely not a long-term solution. So again, what do we do? Well, the long-term solution for this issue is complicated for the following reasons. As a nonprofit, our goal is not to make money, but to fulfill our mission and our mission statement. Typically, we have a budget to break even every year. We don't have the cash flow to quickly and dramatically increase staff or add infrastructure to create more capacity. Increasing our throughput, which for us constitutes the successful development and implementation of a program or service, does not necessarily mean that our revenue increases. As I said, 95% of our revenue comes through private donors, through free will gifts, not through the throughput that we create. Finally, COVID has made everything that was fluid even more fluid. Right now, the demand is high to create online programs and services. This might drastically decrease in the coming weeks and months. Before COVID hit, the demand for our programs and services were already variable in nature, which requires a responsive strategy. To use my oversimplified example from earlier, some months we might have one end-of-life service for a 90-year-old, and the next we might have 6, with one being a young person who took his own life, which requires so much more work. How do we align our staff with our mission and strategy given the constraints in the system, the increased variability and uncertainty in demand due to COVID, all while keeping in mind the financial realities that come from being a nonprofit organization? Well, this is what I'm going to be exploring further in my Go Big or Go Home professional paper. Thanks for joining me for this today. I look forward to your comments.